So, it's a perfect example of today. Everyone's watching the Mayweather fight, but here I am researching about Caligula some more, and, Vespasian and Titus. And I know all white people aren't like this. I love white people. I love Indian people. My first girlfriend was an Indian female, obviously. So, to say that I'm some racist who's doing this because I'm trying to prove my race is superior is not the case. I have made videos where I said that black people are the best fighters and things along those lines. But you have to understand the time period I made the videos. I was in a racial debate about Egypt because I knew the ancient Egyptians were obviously African and had African culture, and they remind me of African culture more than any other culture. That's the strongest thing I felt from them, And if it had been, it really didn't matter what race they were, because the ideas come from the African culture the most, and that's the most obvious thing. That's why it's an African civilization, because it has that more similarities with other African cultures than other cultures. And yeah, it has some. When they say it has Eastern influence, it's more like the people in the Eastern side had more African influences, the Near East and Asia, the Far East, And so, going back really about it is that there's some white people I have some respect for, Socrates, for instance. There's some people like I don't agree with him on some things. Like he believes that since he took part in the state, that he should be punished by the state as well. There's some things like that I don't agree with, because I feel more like a captive of the state. If I was a true citizen of the state who felt like an equal citizen, then I would feel like I should submit myself to the state's judgment and go along with their program. But I never felt like I was treated fairly, by the state, by the different institutions that the state allows or created or controls or regulates, etc. So, I could pretty much count on one hand the white people that I have true respect for going through history. That's another thing that bothers me about it. You know what I mean? I would say Einstein, Socrates, only Einstein because of his efforts to make peace. Okay, most of the white people I respect are peacekeepers. Their efforts were trying to do the right thing. These guys who were conquestors and great military generals like Alexander the Great, I got no respect for. Ptolemy Soter, mixed feelings, mixed feelings. I respected him as a man who respected Africa, but I didn't respect him as a corrupt man, a corrupt politician like everybody else, So, and the fact that people use the Ptolemies and the few other white people who were in Egypt to try to play it off like this is some white culture. Never make that mistake. Being a king is an African thing, but the first people that gave us the idea of being a king was the white man, because we never really took it to that. That's their language. When you say a king, that's their language. In other languages, it might be an obi or a pharaoh. There's different words for it. So when you say that specific thing, yeah, the first king was a white person. But the first person that played that same role, a similar role, or the exact same role in other cultures, was a black person. And that, my friends, is the business model of an empire, which is kind of like a corporation with a CEO and other powerful people making sure that it runs smoothly, usually behind the scenes. And even when they're in plain view, they're still behind the scenes. Because a secret society, for instance, doesn't mean the society is secret. Almost all these secret societies are well known, and they're in your face, and they have lodges downtown in San Francisco and New York. It's that their membership and their agenda and goals are secret. That's what makes them a secret society. So it's the same thing with the ancient Egyptian cults. When we talk about a secret society in the first place, you would be a great idiot, a fool, a complete out-of-touch moron if you did not say that this person got the idea to make a secret society in the first place from somewhere else. Where did he get it? And then when you go to that place, you see, okay, these people got the idea to make a secret society someplace in the first place. In Weishaupt's case, it was the Freemasons. The Freemasons had existed, and he went to them and said, this is how I do it. And at that point, the banking industry was dominating the Masonic lodges as far as financially and far as taking on Masonic works. There was a lot of these fanatical Christians mixed with a lot of these Zionist type of Jews. Now, the early Zionists, go back then, imagine. Now, going back to the secret societies and the evolution of that. So you say, where did the Masons get it? Well, the Masons, they make no secrets about it. They're talking about Hiram Apiff, they're talking about King Solomon, they're talking about biblical things, and we're talking about Babylon, we're talking about Israel, and we're talking about Egypt. Those are the most important, your trinity of the biblical times, if you will. Now, who knew how to make the buildings, and how important were they? The Masons, the ancient Masons, not the Freemasons, but the ancient Masons understood, the ancient architects to be more accurate. But that's basically the same thing if you truly understand the concepts. They came up with the blueprints for these forts based on religious and practical principles that would allow them to inspire, have psychological effect on their fellow troops, and increase morale, and as well as to practically defend in a military fashion, a military fortification at the same time. So as time goes on, the people with the best relationships with these kind of people are the most successful empires, okay, and emperors. And they go out and seek these kind of people, and they grab them and they take them back. So when I say a lot of times the white man stole the knowledge, yeah, you better believe some people were tortured and their families were taken from them and things like that in order for them to reveal the stuff. Some of them kept silent anyway, some of them didn't. And sometimes the priesthoods, like in Egypt, some of the priesthoods, like the priesthoods of Ra and Amun. And Amun was the chief deity, and Ra was the chief deity, but he was considered an older god who needed to be replaced by Osiris, then later by Amun. Now, if you understand how it truly worked, the cult of Amun and the cult of Ra were so intertwined that it was called Amun-Ra. He was called Amun-Ra. It came together. And so you had the illuminates of Ra, and then you had the cult of Amun, who helped Ptolemy have control over Egypt and helped them translate Egyptian hieroglyphics. And you see that in the case of the Rosetta Stone. So, and then you had this other group that was the priesthood of Ra, who the top echelon, the highest level of the priesthood of Ra, and they're called the illuminates of Ra, because the Ra illuminates the world. It brings light to the world, and it enlightens them. And those who are closest to Ra and understand him the most are illuminated the most. So they're the illuminates of Ra, who are illuminated by Ra, also known as the enlightened of Ra, and that is where the Illuminati will get that term, the Illuminati. Now, a lot of people are going to believe these kind of Weishaupt, blah, blah, blah stuff, but the guy was a secretive guy. He made levels of it. What we do know is he made levels of it, and the higher levels knew stuff that the lower levels didn't, and the higher levels knew stuff that was contrary to what was taught on the lower levels. So, I really went on and on in this video, but the bottom line is that's why the race of the ancient Egyptians is so important, because the knowledge that they're taken from is correct. It's just they partially have the knowledge. Just like in Egypt, when Moses and Aaron were challenged by the priesthood in Egypt, and they threw their staffs on the ground, and the Egyptian priest was able to make his staff a snake too, because they had access to the knowledge. It's because they didn't have that extra little bit that would make them a righteous person. Just like the devil is. The devil's very wise, but it comes to a point where he should know better, and he doesn't, because he doesn't have that extra little bit of information. Now, it's the same thing with the pagans and every other religion in the world. You know, is it's harder for them to get into heaven because they don't have that same point of view. They have a similar one. Now, going back to this to the Illuminates of Ra, I'm going to wrap this up so I can only go over like 30 seconds. I hate to go over it all because I'm supposed to keep these under 3 minutes. But anyway, so the Illuminates of Ra, they get assimilated by the Greek secret societies. Because remember, it was the Ptolemies, and the Ptolemies had their own secret societies. That's why Cleopatra is called the last pharaoh. They kept an Egyptian religion. They passed it on to Greece. They kept the secret societies alive. That's why Greece is given credit for being the father of Western culture, father of history and science, and blah blah blah. These are people in Greece: Herodotus and Socrates and blah blah blah, Plato. Now, what happens? Alexander the Great, Aristotle. What happens is that when the English start becoming a power, the gold digging spiritual guys kind of migrate over there, and that's where Freemasonry really gets set up. And then the Illuminati is set up later in Bavaria, and then France plays a part because of the Knights Templar and the Priory of Zion, and I'll get into that another thing. But to this day, the major players are still England, the UK, Germany, and France. Thank you.